loves to paint at night. You have a cozy living room with a lamp that you always turn on when you get creative. You also have a boyfriend who lives with you, but he doesn't necessarily appreciate your passion. He thinks you're wasting your time and your money on art supplies. One night, you walk into the living room, turn on the lamp, and go to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee. When you come back, the lamp is off. You ask your boyfriend if he turned it off, but he denies it. He says you must have forgotten to turn it on, or maybe the bulb is broken. You're pretty sure you turned it on, but you laugh it off and say maybe the house is haunted. But then it happens again, and again, and again, in different rooms, in different ways, and more often. Sometimes the lamp is on, sometimes it's off. Sometimes the TV is off, and sometimes it's on. Sometimes your paintings are moved around the room, and sometimes they're put back in place. You start to wonder if you're losing your mind. Your boyfriend acts like nothing is wrong. He tells you that you're being too sensitive and that you're overreacting, that you're making things up. He tells you that he's the only one who knows the truth and the only one who can help you, that he loves you. He tells you that you need him, that you depend on him, and that you can't live without him. He makes you doubt yourself. He makes you question yourself. He makes you feel like you're going crazy. That is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of manipulation that involves making someone doubt their own memory, perception, or sanity. It's a reality for many people who suffer from abuse, manipulation, or exploitation by someone they trust or love. Gaslighting can happen in any relationship, romantic, familial, professional, or social, and it can have serious consequences for your mental health, your self-esteem, your identity, and your happiness. The term comes from the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband tries to drive his wife insane by dimming the gas lights in their house and making her think she's imagining things. Sounds like a great movie night, right? Well, not if you're the one being gaslit. You see, gaslighting is not just something that happens in old movies or in the past. It can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. And it can be very subtle and very sneaky. Gaslighting is a very dangerous and damaging form of abuse that can destroy your mental health, your self-esteem, your identity, and your happiness. To make matters worse, it can also make you look unstable or crazy to others who don't know what's going on. In the age of social media and online influencers, it can be hard to tell who's telling the truth and who's lying. That's why today, we're going to talk about one of the most shocking cases of gaslighting in modern history, the story of Betty and Dan Broderick. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of M.M.0.S. Stories. This is the channel where we dive into the dark and fascinating side of human history through the lens of art, true crime, and horror. I'm your host, Ala Favela, and I'm here to tell you some creepy and intriguing stories from the past, while I make mixed media artworks inspired by them. If you love true crime, horror, history, and creativity, you are definitely in the right place. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my videos. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for your support and for your comments on the last video. You guys are amazing, and I love hearing from you. As you may know, I do have a big dream for this channel. I'd like to eventually monetize it and to be able to effectively use it as a platform for social good. I believe that social media can be a powerful tool to raise awareness and to inspire positive change within the world. There are hundreds of millions of people online, and if I can reach even just a few of them with my stories and my art, we can make a difference together. But I can't do this alone. I really need your help to spread the word and to get more people to watch this channel. That's why I ask you to follow me on my social media accounts where I post more awesome content and do some fun giveaways and contests. You can find all the links on screen or in the description box below. Right now, I'm doing a giveaway on Instagram where the 100th follower will get a free painting by yours truly, shipped anywhere in the world with no strings attached. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and follow me on Instagram, and maybe you'll be the lucky winner of a one-of-a-kind piece of art. And while you're at it, why not share this video with your friends and family and let them know about the mission? You really do never know who could use the message. One more quick note before I forget. I have an incredibly limited number of prints available from this year's print drop. They're 9 by 12 inches on archival quality paper, and they're priced at $35 Canadian each, or 2 for $50. Shipping is free in Canada, but also available worldwide. If you are interested in these or any of my other paintings, original works, or commissions, please send an email to hello@stageleftproject.ca, and I'll be more than happy to sort you out. On the topic of commissions, I have extended my commission deadline to November 15th of this year for original artwork with a guaranteed delivery date of Christmas. If you are looking for a completely unique gift for a loved one this year, consider giving them the gift of art. Okay, that is enough self-promotion. Let's get into today's video. It's a doozy, again, so grab your paintbrushes, brew yourself some coffee, and get cozy. Without further ado, I am proud to present Gaslighting 101, the Betty Broderick story. Betty Broderick was born on November 7, 1947 in Brooklyn, New York, as Elizabeth Ann Biseglia. She was the third of 6 children of Marita and Frank Biseglia, who were Irish-American and Italian-American, respectively. Her parents owned a successful plastering business with relatives, and they were strict and traditional. Betty was raised to be a housewife and a mother, and attended Catholic schools. The Biseglias were strict parents, and much was expected of all of the Biseglia children. As Broderick later recalled, she was being trained to be a housewife since the day she was born, or, as she put it, go to Catholic school, be careful with dating until you find a Catholic man, support him while he works, and be blessed in your later years with beautiful grandchildren. She also recalled that her school friends were raised in similar situations to hers, which gave her very little chance to rebel. Betty graduated from Maria Regina High School in 1965, and then from the College of Mount St. Vincent in the Bronx, where she earned a degree in early childhood education and a minor in English through an accelerated program. In 1965, Betty met Dan Broderick at the University of Notre Dame, Indiana. Dan was the eldest son of a large Irish Catholic family from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he had similar values to Betty's parents. The couple was married on April 12, 1969, at the Immaculate Conception Church in Tuckahoe, New York. Kim was the first child of Betty and Dan Broderick, born in 1970, right after their honeymoon. Dan had just finished his medical degree at Harvard Medical School, and he was eager to pursue his next goal, becoming a lawyer. He enrolled at Cornell Law School, hoping to use his medical and legal skills in the future. Betty supported this ambitious plan, even though it meant years of hardship and sacrifice for her. She was the main source of income for the family, working as a teacher and a saleswoman while Dan studied with the help of a student loan. She also took care of their growing family, giving birth to 4 more children over the next 9 years. In 1973, Dan graduated from law school and was quickly hired by a prestigious law firm in San Diego, California. He moved his family to the wealthy community of La Jolla, where they bought a luxurious house with a pool and a view of the ocean. Betty continued working part-time, often selling Tupperware or Avon products while raising the children. She also helped Dan to start his own law firm, which specialized in medical malpractice cases. She became a socialite and a homemaker, hosted parties and attended charity events. She seemed to have everything she ever dreamed of: a successful husband, a beautiful home, and a large family. But everything changed in the fall of 1982 when Dan hired Linda Kolkina, a 21-year-old former flight attendant, to be his legal assistant. Linda was young, blonde, and attractive, and Betty soon feared that Dan was having an affair with her. She confronted him about this several times, but he always denied it. He told her that she was being paranoid and insecure, and that Linda was just a friend and an employee. He tried to reassure her that he loved her, and that their marriage was fine. But Betty was not fooled. She saw that Dan was spending more time at work, going on business trips with Linda, and buying her expensive gifts. She also noticed that he was becoming more distant and cold towards her, criticizing her appearance, her behavior, and her parenting. He accused her of being irrational, hysterical, and abusive. He told her that she was crazy, and that she needed therapy. He was gaslighting her. He was making her doubt her own reality and sanity. He was trying to control her and to manipulate her. Against Betty's wishes, Dan moved out of their home in February 1985. He filed for divorce in 1986, finally admitting that he'd been having an affair with Linda for over 3 years. He said that he had fallen out of love with Betty and that he wanted to marry Linda. He offered Betty a generous divorce settlement, including alimony, child support, and half of his assets. But Betty was outraged. She felt betrayed and humiliated by Dan's infidelity and his abandonment. She felt that he had used her for years to achieve his goals, and then discarded her for a younger woman. She felt that he had robbed her of her identity and her happiness. She refused to accept his offer, claiming that he was hiding his true income and his assets. She demanded more money and more respect. The thing is, though, Dan Broderick was a successful and influential lawyer in San Diego, California. He specialized in medical malpractice cases and served as the president of the San Diego Bar Association. He had many connections and friends in the legal community, and he used them to his advantage during his divorce from Betty Broderick. According to Betty, Dan made it extremely hard for her to find a lawyer who was willing and able to represent her in the divorce. She claimed that Dan intimidated, threatened, or bribed any lawyer who tried to help her, or that he had conflicts of interest with them. She also claimed that Dan manipulated the judges and the court system to favor him and his new wife, Linda Kolkina. Betty felt that she was at a distinct disadvantage against Dan, who had more money, power, and knowledge of the law. She felt that he was cheating her out of her fair share of his income and assets, and also that he was taking away her children and her dignity. She felt that he was abusing her emotionally and financially, and that he was gaslighting her into thinking that she was crazy and irrational. Betty's frustration and anger would grow as the divorce dragged on for 4 years, from 1986 to 1989. She became more erratic and vengeful, harassing Dan and Linda with phone calls, letters, vandalism, and threats. She also refused to accept any settlement offer that Dan made, hoping to eventually get more consideration from him. Dan tried to ignore Betty's actions and to move on with his life. He married Linda on April 22, 1989, after 4 years of dating. Linda was worried about Betty's behavior and even asked Dan to wear a bulletproof vest to their wedding, but Betty didn't show up and the wedding did go smoothly. After the wedding, Betty claimed that Linda taunted her by mailing her facial cream and slimming treatment ads. She said that Linda was mocking her age and appearance and trying to make her feel inferior and insecure. She said that Linda was evil, manipulative, and trying to ruin her life. Betty was desperate and angry. She felt that Dan had betrayed her and robbed her of everything she'd worked for. She felt that Linda had stolen her husband and her life. She felt that no one was listening to her or helping her. She felt she had no other option, and she had to take matters into her own hands. On November 5th, 1989, 2 days before her 42nd birthday, Betty drove to Dan's house in the Marston Hills neighborhood near Balboa Park in San Diego. She used a key she had taken from her daughter Lee to enter the house, and while the couple slept, she shot and killed them. The murders occurred at 5:30 a.m. 2 bullets hit Linda in the head and the chest, killing her instantly. 1 bullet hit Dan in the chest as he apparently was reaching for the phone. 1 bullet hit the wall, and 1 bullet hit a nightstand. Dan was 17 days shy of his 45th birthday. Linda was 28. Betty claimed that she never planned to kill Dan and Linda, and that her crime was not premeditated. She said that she was startled by Linda screaming, "Call the police!" and immediately fired the gun. She also claimed that she'd spoken to Dan after she shot him. But the evidence showed otherwise. The evidence showed that Betty had bought a Smith & Wesson revolver 8 months before the murders, and that she had removed a phone/answering machine from Dan's bedroom so that he could not call for help. The evidence also showed that Dan did not die right away and that he suffered before he perished. Betty turned herself into the police after contacting her daughter Lee and Lee's boyfriend. She never once denied that she did in fact pull the trigger. Broderick was represented by Jack Early, a criminal defense attorney who tried to show the jury that Broderick was a battered wife who suffered years of abuse at the hands of her ex-husband. Broderick claimed that Dan had manipulated, controlled, and betrayed her throughout their marriage and divorce, and that he used his legal influence to deprive her of her rights and her assets. Broderick also said that Dan and his new wife Linda had taunted and harassed her, pushing her to the brink of despair. The prosecution, led by Carrie Wells, painted a much different picture of Broderick. Wells argued that Broderick was a cold-blooded murderer who had planned and executed the killings of Dan and Linda sheerly out of jealousy and revenge. Wells also disputed Broderick's claim of being a battered wife, saying that she had never reported any physical abuse or sought any medical or psychological help. The prosecution relied on the testimony of Dr. Park Dietz, a forensic psychiatrist and criminologist who had examined Broderick. Dietz said that Broderick had histrionic and narcissistic personality disorders, meaning that she was overly dramatic, self-centered, and lacking in empathy. Dietz based his diagnosis on the analysis of Dr. Melvin Goldsband, who had also worked on the case for the prosecution. Goldsband had similarly diagnosed Broderick as severely narcissistic and histrionic. The defense, however, countered with the testimony of Dr. Catherine DeFrancesca, a clinical psychologist who also evaluated Broderick. DeFrancesca agreed that Broderick was histrionic with narcissistic features. However, she also said that Broderick suffered from depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder as a direct result of the abuse that she endured from Dan. The lead detective in the case was Terry DeGelder, who worked for San Diego Homicide. DeGelder testified for the prosecution about the evidence he had collected at the crime scene and the statements he obtained from Broderick. Broderick's first trial ended with a hung jury, as 2 jurors believed that she had acted without intent and should be convicted of manslaughter
instead of murder.
Judge Thomas J. Whalen declared a mistrial and ordered a new one. Broderick was retried a year later with the same lawyers on both sides. The second trial was very similar to the first one, but this time the jury found Broderick guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. Broderick was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of 15 years to life, plus 2 years for illegal use of a firearm, the maximum penalty allowed by law. She's been in prison ever since. Broderick is serving her sentence at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. She has been denied parole 3 times in 2010, 2011, and 2017 because she has not shown any remorse or acknowledged any wrongdoing. She will not be eligible for parole again until 2032, when she will be 84 years old. Dan and Linda Broderick were buried together at Greenwood Memorial Park in San Diego. They're mourned by their families and friends, who remember them as kind and generous people. Betty Broderick's story is a tragic one. She's a woman who loved her husband and devoted her entire life to him, only to be betrayed and abandoned. She's a woman who fought for her rights and interests, only to be ignored and oppressed by her husband and society as a whole. She's a woman who lost her sanity and her happiness, only to be driven to violence. She's a woman who deserved better. Let's make one thing very clear. I do not condone unaliving anyone, no matter how awful they are, but I can absolutely relate to Betty's story more than you think. Betty's story shows what can happen to a victim of abuse when they finally snap after years of torment and humiliation. I know what it's like to be in that situation because I've been there myself. When I left my ex, He launched a vicious campaign to destroy my reputation and my sanity. Him and his cronies stalked me, harassed me, and attacked me both on and offline. He assaulted me physically and sexually after we broke up. It was the most terrifying and loneliest time of my life, and I felt like I had absolutely no way out. The only thing that saved me from drowning in despair was the support of my true friends who stood by me and helped me through the nightmare. The other thing that helped me heal was social media, where I found a voice and a community of other survivors. That's how I started the Stage Left project and M.M.0.S stories, by sharing my story and helping others who are going through the same thing. So yes, I understand Betty on an intimate level. I have felt that rage, pain, and disgust for the man who betrayed me and ruined my life. But I was lucky enough to have people surrounding me who cared for me, who empathized with me, and who prevented me from making bad choices that would have cost me everything. Domestic abuse is a serious and widespread problem that affects millions of people around the world. It can be extremely traumatic to experience, leaving behind physical wounds, emotional scars, and many health issues. It can affect every aspect of the survivor's life, and it makes it difficult for them to function. Recovery takes time, but speaking up about the abuse, leaving the abusive situation, and seeking treatment are important steps that can help. One of the effects of domestic abuse is that it can alter the way that a victim reacts to stress, conflict, and emotions. Domestic abuse can cause the victim to develop coping strategies that may not be healthy or effective in other situations. For example, victims of domestic abuse may feel scared or anxious, have trouble sleeping, have trouble concentrating, lose self-confidence, feel isolated, avoid certain topics or behaviors that trigger their thoughts of the abuser, blame themselves for the abuse or think that they deserved it, feel guilty or ashamed for leaving or for staying in the abusive relationship, and they might experience depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, or suicidal thoughts. These reactions are understandable. They're normal, given the trauma that the victim has endured. However, it can also make the victim more vulnerable to further abuse or manipulation by their abuser. Their abuser may use these reactions against the victim by accusing them of being crazy, weak, or oversensitive, minimizing or denying the abuse or its impact, making them feel guilty or responsible for their actions or emotions, isolating them from their friends, family, and support networks, controlling their finances, activities, and access to resources, threatening to harm them, their loved ones, themselves if they leave or disobey, and by gaslighting them to make them doubt their own memories, perception, and sanity. The abuser may also try to convince the victim that they're the only one who loves them, understands them, and can help them. The abuser may use intermittent reinforcement by alternating between being abusive and being loving, creating a cycle of confusion and dependency in the victim. The victim may feel trapped, hopeless, or dependent on the abuser. They may also fear the consequences of leaving or of reporting their abuse. They may have low self-esteem and believe that they are unworthy of respect, love, and happiness. They may also have difficulty trusting others and forming healthy relationships. It's important to remember that domestic abuse is never the victim's fault. The victim is not responsible for the abuser's behavior or choices. The victim has the right to be safe, respected, and free from violence. The victim also has the right to seek help and support from others who can assist them in breaking free from this abusive situation. You do not have to suffer in silence. You're not alone. You deserve to be safe, respected, and happy. If you or someone you love is going through domestic abuse, please check out the resources that I've compiled in the description below. You can find information, counseling, advocacy, legal assistance, shelter, and other services that can support you in your journey of healing and recovery. You can also download a free safety planning guide from my Linktree that can help you prepare for different scenarios and protect yourself from harm. If you have any questions or you need more information, please feel free to reach out to me on social media or send me an email, hello@stageleftproject.ca. I am always here to listen and to help where I can. What a wild ride. I hope you enjoyed this vlog and learned something today. Today, we discussed gaslighting, a sneaky and sinister form of psychological abuse which messes with your mind and makes you question your own sanity. Gaslighting can happen in any kind of relationship and is often used by abusers to control and manipulate their victims. It has devastating effects on mental health and well-being. If you think you might be being gaslit by someone, please do not stay silent. Reach out to someone else you trust and get the help and the support that you need and deserve. You are not crazy. You are not alone, and you don't deserve to be treated this way. We also looked at the case of Betty Broderick, who was gaslit by her ex-husband for years. He cheated on her, lied to her, manipulated her, and humiliated her. And then he used his legal power and influence to strip her of her remaining rights and assets. Him and his new wife also harassed and taunted her, which made her feel even more isolated and hopeless. Betty snapped and unalived them both in a fit of rage and despair. Now, I'm not condoning what she did, but I can empathize with her. She was pushed to the edge by the abuse that she endured. She felt like she had no other option. She was a victim of abuse, who became a murderer. It's a tragic and twisted tale which shows how dangerous mental and emotional abuse can truly be. The piece I worked on today is called Contingency, and it's inspired by the episode of the same name from Chris Straub's incredible analog horror web series, Local 58. If you haven't seen it yet, you should absolutely check it out. It is creepy, clever, and captivating. I promise you'll never look at the moon quite the same way again. I've linked it in the description of this video for your convenience. Leave him a skull comment in the emoji of your favorite episode to let him know that Ella sent you. This piece is 9 by 12 inches, and it is made of watercolor, gouache, mica pigments, India and acrylic inks, gold foil, and gel pen on 300 GSM, 140 pound cold pressed watercolor block. That's a mouthful. It's available for purchase, so if you are interested, please do send me an email, hello@stageleftproject.ca, for further details. Thank you so much for your time. I'm always humbled by your attention. I hope to see you again very soon. Remember, one day you will die, but for now, live well. Ciao for now.